3 inversions are not to be left out of that formula. So we do invert in restorative yoga. It's really big. Like, I want to stress this one the most because I think sometimes we forget there are major effects. They've been doing study on like stress relief for a really long time, but even more so like what inversions do for the body. Apana and prana are the 2 energies, right? The masculine energy, prana, starts in the abdomen, moves upwards. Apana starts below the diaphragm and moves downward. It's responsible for like expulsion and stuff. And so when we, like, I don't know, you know, like when shit gets weird, actual shit now, gets weird, like life gets weird, my digestion starts to be altered, right? That ability to expel or expel is part of that process. And so it can affect us, and we want to try to create balance and harmony between these things. And when we practice inversions, what we do is, from our regular day lives, like gravity keeps lymphatic and blood drained down to the lower parts of the body. And so by practicing an inversion, we work some of that out, the lymphatic and the blood drainage in the system, but also we move that blood flow so the heart functions better and the blood vessels dilate in the upper body. And so we're actually moving blood more soundly and mindfully through our heart. We're pumping it. So inversions are a very important piece to this, and I feel like it's not about like getting so vertical, it's just about moving that energy downward towards the heart. 4th, stimulate and soothe the organs. So stimulate and soothe the organs, which means sequencing matters. So we do want to like be cognizant of how we sequence our classes. And then last but not least, 5. Oh, I already covered it, prana and apana, right? So we want to work on benefiting and harmonizing prana energy and apana energy in the body. For this, like we think about tapas. Restorative yoga, okay, is going to encourage you to be in a place of silence and then to hold for a while. And the urge will be like, shit, I'm just like laying here relaxing and I have a million other things I need to be doing that make me productive, because that's how I measure my success and my ability to like perform in a day. That is your moment for tapas to like stick it out and build the stamina, the ability to like stay in the pose itself and encourage your parasympathetic nervous system to engage. Really, that's the perseverance and endurance of the practice. And this English proverb that I came across in the books as I was doing some research, gentle is as gentle does. Mm-hmm. And I think that in yoga we hear like, as above, so below. Like these qualities they're not just said casually over all these years because people were just like spouting out rhymes and like saying the things. Like they hold a purpose. They're very intentional. So how do we create a gentle experience, a gentle environment for ourselves, right? If the pose is the environment in which we work towards homeostasis, how do we physically create a gentle experience? And I appreciate you like appreciating my humor, Jenna.
All I can see is like Krishna rhyming towards you.
Yes, it's just like over here, just a yoga jam over here.
Yeah, it's like casual, like
yeah, that's what the Sanskrit was for. So the goal is to be gentle with ourselves, allowing ourselves to open up. And so I do have several postures to cover with this, but I do want to go through. This is how we do it. Okay, so key places to look for. We hold tension are, anybody?
Jaw.
All everywhere?
I know, yes. Yes, and low back, abdomen, neck, and the jaw muscles. Those are like really 4 apparent places. Even through like these soft, subtle stillnesses, you'll see that these are the 4 areas in which you'll probably find more of the tension still trying to show up in itself in a physical form. So Pratyahara. Pratyahara, which is sensory withdrawal, is a place where there's no ambition, no curiosity, but there is softness. So this, a conscious withdrawal of input of senses. So how we consciously remove ourselves from the sensory experience, which is why we, again, encourage quiet. I feel like, Kate, you mentioned a little bit about like not having sound on Wednesday. Would you mind sharing a little, like what we just spoke to really quickly?
Oh, yeah. So I find that it's easier for me to drown out the sound than to be in complete silence. So we were just chatting about how I was really aware of all the sounds that were outside the room, when traditionally with music I can like be on my mat and feel like I'm more like present in some way. So it was a true practice for me to be able to like bring it back to my breath in that moment.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, thank you. We would hear like some, like, you know,
Car
we talked about
behavior
first
or
world
something.
problems, like you hear like people locking their cars or like shutting their doors and this and that, and but to maybe cover it up with sound only adds to the fact that we're constantly bombarded with noise in our lives. And so this may be what we really truly create for our students. Even at the end of any of your classes, especially if you don't have overlap, like I highly consider you encouraging quiet and silence for them, because you might be gifting them the one thing that they don't get very much for themselves. Like literally yesterday I was, you know, telling Craig how much trouble I was having like writing my notes down and stuff because I couldn't function, and it's because my son, all he does is talk right now. Like he's a 2-year-old, he loves to talk, he is my mirror, like I get it, but he does not stop. And it is so hard for me to function or get my like head to wrap around things or like get work done because I'm constantly bombarded by noise and sound and sometimes like somebody trying to engage with me. So that sensory withdrawal is really important, a place for us to be in softness. Props are used to relieve your muscles and bones of their roles of support and action, right? We use the muscles, efforted, the bones for support and action. So we use the props to help that out, and the nervous system sends and receives fewer messages, and that's where we really start to move into that like rest and digest sort of state. And we become quieter. So the goal is relaxation towards Shavasana, Shavasana, and then what in Sanskrit it's called Shunya or Shunyata is what it is a bigger word from it, but it comes from the root word of Shunya, which is to be contentless, to be without. It is actually what they say, like, you know, the philosophies would tell you, like Brahma is associated, he sometimes is referred to, I want to call him he, but like Brahma itself as an entity is alternately used with the word shunya. Is to be without, is the form and the start and existence of all things. And there's like a deep peace and a place that we come from, and we actually don't know shunya till we've come out of it, or like we were like, oh, I was in this place of like pure quiet contentment, and we don't really know till we're back contained with content again to compare it to. So that is what we're working on.
How do you spell shunya? Sorry.
Oh, shunya, well technically it's S-U-N-Y-A with the like swirling on the S and the line across the U, but S-H-U-N-Y-A. And shunyata is S-U-N-Y-A-T-A. That word you might come across more easily. Shunya itself is a little bit, Sanskrit is a little bit hard to find on the interweb sometimes. Okay, so more about the body, right? We talked about the 4 places that we're likely to find attention. So what are the few places that we really want to give consideration to? The head and neck are going to be your 2 most important things. And your skull is separate from your neck, okay? So let's all make a fist with one hand, okay? And let's have both of our hands free. So make a fist with one hand, and then try to make a tight fist with the other hand. Do you notice that your first fist became a little bit tighter as you started to grip down? So the idea is that we make a fist and then we try to grip this fist tighter. Your first hand already tries to engage a bit more, and that's how this flow of engagement in the nervous system starts to bleed into itself. It works both ways. So we want to start with the physical environment, the outer environment, and start with the body, and then what happens is the rest of the stuff, we start to bleed that into the internal, the mental, the psyche self, and it builds upon itself. So where we really want to create support in the skull is you can all bring the hand to the back of your head. If you're like a ponytail, you might move it. The back of your head has like a round space, and then if you slide your hand down a little bit, beneath the occiput is a flat space in your skull. That's what you're really trying to support with props and blocks, or the blanket, in our effort to create this relaxation. So when this piece of us is supported, we can almost like look down to our lower lids, and that helps us downward regulate as well. So that's the space we're trying to encourage support for, not the actual back of the head. And what you'll know that we'll see it in this community a bit more too, because I think of like the effort of CrossFitters and like the work that we, musculature that we build up, but also with men is that the skull is sometimes a little bit harder to support. So you might need to use your props a little more wisely to help create that relaxation state. And the second part of the body we really want to focus on are the knees. And because in turn, after the head and the knees are given, the space that's in between is the low back and the abdomen, and that stuff will start to settle as well once you kind of get these 2 points to take a look at. So, since we have talked about, I really mentioned like we want to try to move the spine in the 6 different ways. I have all the postures that I'm teaching will meet somewhere. At least I'm not going to be able to give you a ton of options for them, but basic relaxation pose, which is Shavasana. We'll do a couple back bends, because often what I find, and I'm learning about the back bends, is that we're not breathing well enough as a society. We're already shallow breathing, but we're not even understanding. If you look at the body, the lungs in itself, and the rib cage that fits around it, our rib cage actually comes to like a narrow bone right underneath our collarbone. So our lungs come up really fucking high, but we don't even take it to the top of our lungs. We keep this breath right here. So our opportunity is to really open up. So back bends, I have 2 of those for you. I have 1 neutral spine for you. And then we'll cover a couple, a fold, a side bend, and a twist. So that way you've got your 6 movements of the spine, and you're able to really meet that whole, how we sequence, why we sequence, and what we do matters. Okay?
Yeah.
Good? Everybody's got their blankets? Let's talk about a blanket fold. Okay. Let's open these babies up. And when there's fringe, we do fringe to fringe. So your short ends come together. You bring all the fringe onto one side. Okay. So fringe to fringe. Then it's still fringe to fringe, so the fringe stays on one side. Okay. And then fringe to no fringe, you fold it in half. So this is our standard fold of the blanket. Yay! It will make your life a lot easier if you can provide this consistently for the class, and just a place to start. Tell your students this is the fold you want. I think it just sets you up for greater success. So basic relaxation pose, Shavasana. We can support the knees with one of these in a long roll. So you can just roll it under, and then one of these would go behind the back of the knees, okay? And then the second one would go behind the back of the head. And we've been doing a blanket pillow. I've been doing these, I was trained in them. They're not too complicated, but I always have trouble explaining to my students that the loose side gets folded up. And so the other thing to consider is we want this here, and whatever version of it, if I was laying on my mat, to get a little bit under the front of the shoulders, because naturally how the humerus bones settle into the shoulder socket, they're slightly forward. So if you even lay on your back, there's just a subtle lift here. It's really hard for us to create this without an actual support settling underneath this. So, Devin, do you mind coming over here?
Yeah.
Do I?
Purvi. So, can I use your blanket?
You earned this today after
Yes. So,
Really?
back of the knees, lift them a little bit. Great, you can let your legs go long, that's it. And then what we want is it to be just under the tops of their shoulders. So people will like slide it down past their shoulder blades, and I'm always like, you gotta get that up a little bit. We really just want it a couple inches past the front of their shoulder, the top of their shoulders. You wanna lift your head for me just a little bit, and your shoulders even a little bit. There we go. Slide it on down. I hold your head up, and then I hold it. You can let the weight of your head go. Good. We want to grab some of the loose flap under the blanket, and then slide it where their C7 and T1 meet. So their cervical 7 vertebra and their thoracic 1, their first vertebra, the thoracic spine. How's that feel?
Fantastic.
So her head, you can see, her head's above her chin's above her breastbone. So we've created a little space where there's a subtle tilt. Her forehead's higher than her chin. That's what we want, and that downward regulating movement. And then you always roll under towards them, not out. So out would be this way, under is down towards the ground and underneath. And you can just like tuck them in slowly. Take that time to kind of swaddle their head in.
Swaddle.
A little head swaddle, back of their head swaddle.
Are you holding both layers or just the top layer?
So it's all the